Janmashtami is starting, or is tomorrow. So, Janmashtami is actually today in India, because India is 12 and a half hours ahead of the US. It's literally halfway around the world, so it's right at that 12-hour mark. You know, New Zealand is 19 hours ahead of us, but it's actually a lot closer than India, because you have to pick an international date line, and that's the point where you make the move. It's like somewhere in Samoa or something like that. They tried to pick an area of the world which was relatively uninhabited, so it's near Samoa or Micronesia, somewhere in the South Pacific. But you go from, like in Hawaii, you're 5 hours behind, or 3 hours behind, and then all of a sudden you jump in New Zealand and you're 19 hours ahead. Did you guys follow that? So it's just 2 hours difference between Hawaii and New Zealand, time-wise, but it ends up being whether you're 3 hours behind or 19 hours ahead, because there's that date line there. Anyway, so in India right now, it's Krishnastami, it's Janmashtami, it's Krishna's birthday, which is, it's our biggest holy day of the year. It's our busiest holy day of the year. And so inevitably there's a bunch of people from India who think that Janmashtami is today. So I probably fielded 100 phone calls today and yesterday, between the 2 days, of people saying, is Janmashtami on Sunday? And I'm like, no, it's Monday. And I'm like, no, it's Monday in India, it's Sunday here, but it doesn't work like that, because if you calculate astrologically, then you have to calculate from where you are, not from where somebody else is who's 12 hours ahead of you. Did you follow that? Like if a tropical storm hits India and it's moving towards the US, they don't last that long, but if it did last that long and a tropical storm hit India, you wouldn't be able to say the tropical storm has hit the United States. That would be ridiculous. Like, no, but I'm from India. Yeah, but it still doesn't matter if you're not in India. At the moment the tropical storm hits, then you have to go based on where you are in the world and prepare based on that. Did you guys follow that? So you calculate the date astronomically by the lunar calendar and the phase of the moon and the tithi, the time of the day. And so you can't calculate what's happening in India and then think that translates exactly to the same in the US, because we're actually in a different time zone. And the world hasn't turned enough that it's Krishna's birthday here. Did you guys follow that? Anyway, I usually just get sick of telling people this on the phone. So I just say, yes, Monday. And I just repeat myself 5 or 7 times, and then they're like, okay. They let it go. I had this problem in Spanish too. In Spanish, people repeat themselves over and over again. It's like a cultural thing. You ever notice that? When you're talking to somebody and you settle on a point, they'll say the point over again in their own way, one more time. Have you ever noticed this? Yeah. It totally disturbs me, because I'm thinking, did I miss something? Then I have to repeat what they said back to them again. Then they say it again to me in a slightly different way, and I keep thinking, I'm missing something, and I'm not grasping some subtle nuance of the language. And then my friend Varangi one time said, no, you follow them. It's just a cultural thing. They just always say it 3 times extra. It's like when you call somebody from India, hello, 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 hello. You ever had that happen? And somebody has to say, Haribol, and then they realize it's not their own voice echoing. You have to change it and say good morning, namaskar, namaste. You have to say something to break it up. Otherwise it ends up being this forever echo. Have you guys ever noticed this one? Anyway. So yeah, today is not Janmashtami. And so we have a whole program tomorrow from 6 o'clock to midnight. Big program. And even with COVID the way it is, I'm suspecting maybe 700 people will roll through. We're going to try and put them in a queue so they don't all stay here the whole program, and we don't end up with a temple room with 400 people in it. But my guess is we'll end up with about 700 people pouring through here tomorrow. It's a big day for us. Some of our temples, like Los Angeles, might have 2,000 people come through. So yeah, it's a very big holy day for us. So I thought, well, because it's not Janmashtami, but it's the day before, I thought it might be nice to try to demonstrate Krishna in Vrindavan from the Gita. That might not make sense, so I'm going to explain it. I just want to say it as a sentence, but I'm going to explain it now. If you read the Gita, the person who speaks the Gita is very much a classical conception of God. An all good, all powerful, all benevolent deity that is the source of the universe and that deserves our devotion and love and respect for creating the world, for creating us, for giving us consciousness. And so the deity that speaks the Gita, although the deity's name is Krishna, really who's speaking the Gita is Vishnu. It's the classical, formal, powerful conception of divinity that you find in many monotheistic traditions. It's just the Indian variety. Vishnu's not like us. He has 4 arms. He holds a chakra that can destroy the universe. He has a club that can also smash the universe. If you see Vishnu, the natural effect of seeing Vishnu is that you will fall to your knees in supplication, and you'll offer prayers, and you'll feel yourself to be small and insignificant in the splendor and light and power that is Vishnu. As is said in the Gita, if 1,000 suns were to rise at once, that's the splendor. And Krishna even goes big and says, I am time, the great destroyer of the world. So Krishna in the Gita is time. He's 1,000 suns and moon. In fact, the sun and moon are his eyes, seeing everything. The whole universe comes from him. Brahmano hi pratishtaha. He's the source even of Brahman, normally what's considered to be spirit. In Hinduism, Krishna says, I'm the source of that. Brahmanaha hi pratishtaham. I'm the source of Brahman. So when you look at the way Krishna describes himself, and even the way Arjuna's response to Krishna talking is Param Brahma, Param Dhamma, Pavitram, Paramam Bhavam, Purusham, Shashvatam, Divyam, Adi Devam, Ajam Vibhum. You are Adi Dev, the original God. Vibhu, the powerful one. Param Brahma, the supreme Brahman. Param Dhamma, the supreme abode. Pavitram, pure. Paramam Bhavam, you are supreme. Purusham Shashvatam, you're the eternal person. Divyam, you're transcendental. When Arjuna is responding to Krishna in the Gita, Arjuna describes Krishna in this language. Those are the types of prayers that you would typically offer to Vishnu. Therefore, although the deity speaking the Gita is Krishna, he's really doing the job description in the Gita of Vishnu. He is a classical deity, omnipotent, and Arjuna's reaction is the reaction that one has when coming in contact with a powerful, fearsome, strong deity. And Arjuna's reaction is typical. You fall to your knees, you supplicate, you offer prayers, you ask for forgiveness, etc., etc. Any religion in the world has this type of interaction between God and the soul. Krishna, the conception of Krishna, is distinct from that. The reaction to devotees who see Krishna is they go up and embrace Krishna. They dance with Krishna. They kiss Krishna. In Yashoda's case, she brings Krishna to her breast and suckles Krishna, who drinks from her breast. So the reaction of the devotees to the revelation of Krishna is really distinct from the reaction of people all over the world to a classical revelation of God. It's subversive and bewildering and unusual and strange and atypical. If you look at our iconography, Krishna's worshipped as a child. Krishna's playing. He has no weapons. He doesn't have 4 arms. He has 2 arms. He's stealing. He's playing. His divinity is utterly subdued to the point that his devotees are caring for him as if he was their own child, thinking of him as helpless and in need of their protection. When Krishna holds up Govardhan Hill, all the elders in his village say, no, you cannot do it. You're too weak. We will hold it. With our sticks, you go sit down. And so you see in old paintings of Krishna holding Govardhan Hill, all the cowherd men standing around with their sticks holding the hill up, because they think that they're the ones, they're the men. Krishna's just a boy. Krishna eats dirt like children do, and his mother wants to get him in trouble. And so she looks in his mouth and she sees the universe in Krishna's mouth. And then in the universe in Krishna's mouth, she sees herself looking in Krishna's mouth in the universe. And she thinks she's like, that she's gotten sunstroke. She goes home and forgets about it. The reaction of the devotees to Krishna is totally unusual to the point of being bewilderingly strange if you contrast it to the normative reactions that you would find in Judaism, Christianity, Islam. And if you want to say, although there's just 3 religions, yeah, that's 2/3 of the world's population. Christians are 3 billion people. Muslims are somewhere between 1.5 and 2 billion people. You're looking at 2/3 of the world's population. You add in close to 1 billion Hindus, and you're like 3/4 of the world. Subtract a few atheists, and you practically got nobody left. There's like some minor cults, Zoroastrianism and Jainism, and a few 100 million Buddhists. But it's like you've really covered the bases. It's not just when we say the major conception of God for these groups, we're saying the major prevailing conception of God for almost everybody on the planet. Did you follow this? So for most people, and I'm repeating myself maybe for the 8th time now, and I'm hoping at some point you guys will nod your head and show me that you get what I'm saying, because the whole poker game thing leaves me bewildered and just repeating myself, because I'm not sure if you've understood me. When most people in the world think of seeing God, the reaction they would have, the reaction they would expect, or that they would expect that they would have, or they would expect others to have, and what's recorded in their sacred texts is people falling to their knees and making prayers and asking for grace and confessing. That's the normal, typical reaction to an omnipotent, omnibenevolent, omniscient, omnipresent deity. Krishna presents himself like that in the Gita. The sun and the moon are my eyes. If 1,000 suns would arise at once, that's what Krishna looks like. I am death that takes everything away. I am time that destroys the world. Everything comes from me. Everything resides in me, etc., etc. Everything is within me. I pervade everything invisibly. The description Krishna gives of himself in the Gita is a typical, what would be called a classical conception of divinity. And that is distinct from the Krishna that we're talking about. Because the reaction of Krishna's devotees for thousands of years in our tradition, in our sacred literature, is that when they see Krishna, they embrace him. They wrestle with him. They play with him. They steal from him. They challenge him. They suckle him. They protect him. They clothe him. They bathe him. They feed him. They nurse him. They care for him. And they think of Krishna like their child, like their friend, like their lover. Anything but Krishna as God. And when Krishna does display his divinity to those devotees, they shake it off. He lifts Govardhan on a hill, they shake it off. They think, we're lifting Govardhan. Yashoda sees the universe in his mouth, she thinks, I must be sick. Even Krishna shows his divinity, arguably as extremely as he does in the Gita. And Arjuna's reaction is, forgive me for having called you a friend. Forgiving me for having taken license with you and having treated you as if you were equal to me. I now realize you're the supreme. When Krishna shows his divinity to his devotees, they don't accept it. They forget it. They shake it off. They take credit for what Krishna's done. When Krishna goes out to herd cows, Yashoda Mai, she gets in the Shringa Kavacha, prayers. The Kavacha means shield, but it specifically refers to prayers which are written down on palm leaves and then rolled up. They're written down very small on palm leaves and then rolled up and put inside a tube which is then tied around your arm. And so Yashoda gets Nrsimha Kavacha, Narayan Kavacha, and she ties it to Krishna's arms, afraid that something might happen to him when he goes out to herd cows. She makes him lunch because she's afraid he's going to get hungry. The reaction of devotees to seeing Krishna is so anachronistic, it's so unusual, it's so subversive, it's so atypical, it's almost like they don't get that he's God. And in fact, they don't. Our literature says there's a corner of heaven where you can love God so intensely that your love diminishes Krishna's opulence and power to such an extent where you don't notice Krishna's opulence and power and you think of Krishna as being just like you. Because if there's too much of a hegemony or a power differential between God and the soul, that kills intimate love. Perhaps it facilitates formal love or obedience or fear, but it definitely kills intimate love, what to speak of romantic love. Therefore, there is a corner of heaven where people get to love God. Cover your... Yeah, thank you. It's okay. Where people get to love God to their heart's content without any blockage that would be created by formality. Like if you met the president, you wouldn't go up and beg him to give sloppy kiss. But his mother would. Because her relationship with him is not a relationship based on him being present, but based on him being her son. We like to love Krishna like this. They can bring the stroller in if they want. I don't know why they would need to. Yeah, we're in Laguna Beach. No one steals anything. We're in a fancy town. You can leave your shoes and your big stroller. There's no danger. Hey, shh. Whatever they're going to do, they should do so quietly. Did you guys follow that? So I wanted to see if I could make an argument for that intimate deity Krishna in Vrindavan being loved by his devotees so much so they forgot his divinity, if I could make that argument from the Gita. And because not Janmashtami, I figured I'd give it a try. I just thought of this as I sat down, so I had, a whopping 2 minutes of prep time. But I'm pretty good under pressure. I think I'll probably do okay. But you understand what we're doing today? Of course you don't. You just walked in 2 minutes ago because you're super late. How could you possibly understand? If you've been here the whole time, you probably wouldn't have understood. But I'll say it one more time, just so everybody's super clear, because I'm even doubtful about you people who've been here for the whole class. Generally speaking, when you think of God, you think of a classical conception of a powerful deity who holds your fate in his hands. As such, your relationship with that deity is prayerful, it's fear-based, and it is filled with respect and admiration, which means it's not filled with intimacy and romance. The deity of the Gita is such a deity, where the sun and the moon are his eyes, where he's like 1,000 suns rising at once, where Arjuna apologizes for having thought of him as being just a normal human, where he identifies himself with death and with time, which acts as entropy and takes everything away. That is easily contrastable to Krishna. You guys have made a lot of noise coming in. Kind of tone it down. Thank you. That's contrastable to Krishna. When Krishna's devotees have a revelation and they see Krishna, what is their reaction? What is their reaction? Love. But what? What do they do? I don't understand love. What do they do? They embrace him. What else do they do? They kiss him. What else do they do? They suckle him to their breast because they think of him as their child. This is like, it's just like, what is this? That's because our sacred literature speaks of a corner of heaven where people love God without limit, so much so they forget his divinity, and that's manifested when Krishna picks up Govardhan Hill. They pick it up and say, sit down, bacha. Little boy, sit down. And when he shows them the universe, they just think that they've been out in the sun too long, and they go home, drink some water. Practically speaking, there is nothing Krishna can do to show his power that will convince the devotees that he's anything other than their child or their friend. And there's a theological reason for that. And that is that power minimizes intimacy. If someone has too much power over you, you cannot love them intimately. Fear and formality will take place, will take over. And you'll be frozen, and you'll offer prayers, and you'll put your head down, and you'll feel yourself small. In contrast, when Krishna's devotees see Krishna, they feel themselves big. You are just a child. I will protect you. Who can think of such a thing? Our sacred literatures. So what I want to do is I wanted to look at the Gita, and I wanted to see if there were verses that supported the Krishna in Vrindavan idea, interspersed amongst the more formal, powerful talk. Did you guys follow that? All right. You got it? Okay, so here we go. Jamma karma chame divyam evam yo veti tatvata. Krishna says that Jamma karma chame divyam. My karma, my activities, and my Jamma are divya. Evam yo veti tatvataha. One who knows this in tattva, in truth. Then naiti mameti sorjana. They do not They come to me. Eti sa, they come to me. Naiti mam punarjama, they don't take another birth. So Krishna it's a very interesting point he makes. But Krishna says that his birth, Krishna being a child, being born of parents, being in a relationship that makes him typical and human, that's actually transcendental. And if you understand that, and if you see the beauty in that, then the result is that you will go to Krishna and you will be liberated. That's a pretty powerful statement. But what's interesting about the statement is Krishna says Janma. He doesn't say Avirbhav, which means appearance. He says Janma, my birth. That indicates that Krishna's birth is not an illusion or a fake thing that you have to argue around like the birth of Jesus or something like that. It's actually a transcendental moment that's worthy of being meditated on, that has a deep truth to it, a deep truth so powerful that if you understand it, you will transcend this world of Maya and go back to Krishna. Did you guys follow that? I'm not done, just getting warmed up. Obviously there's no single verse that just nails this, otherwise there wouldn't be any challenge involved. Don't give me that disapproving look just because I didn't nail it with one verse. I'm building an argument here, putting a bundle of sticks together. Because if there was one verse where Krishna says, I'm actually in Vrindavan and that's a higher love, then there'd be no problem. You follow? I have other texts that say that, but I want to stick to the Gita, which requires me to do a little more philosophizing with the text. All right. Paras tasmat tu bhavo anya. But there is another thing beyond this world, superior to this world. Avyakta vyaktat sanatana. It's the unmanifested world that's beyond this manifested world. Ya sasaveshu bhuteshu nashatsu cha vinashati. When everything in this world is destroyed, that world is not destroyed. Avyakta akshar iti uktas. It's known as avyakta or akshar, undecaying, unmanifested, invisible. Tam ahu paramam gatin. It's spoken of as the supreme goal. Paramam gati, the supreme goal. Yam prapya nanivartante. Having achieved that, you don't come back. Tat dham paramam mama. That abode is my abode. Do you guys follow that? That means there's a corner of heaven that's Krishna's place, that's transcendental. And then, Purusha saparaparta bhaktya labhya tu ananyaya. That supreme being is only achievable by pure devotion. Now, if your devotion is mixed with fear, is that pure devotion? It is not. If your bhakti or your love is mixed with fear of God's power and what He could do to you, would that be considered to be pure devotion? It would not be. So this is another little scent, a little smell that we get. Yasyantastani bhutani yena sarvamidam tatan. I'm situated in all things. I'm spread out throughout the universe. It's a separate point. Krishna also speaks in the 9th chapter of the Gita. He speaks about Rakshashim asurim chaiva prakritim mohinim ashritaha. Of people, impious people, who take shelter of illusion. And he contrasts them to Mahatmanas tumam partha. Is somebody talking? Who's talking? Shh. Thank you. I can't study while you're talking. I'm just not that shanti. I need just a little bit of quiet to focus. Krishna speaks about asurim rakshasham chaiva mohinim prakritim ashrita. People who take shelter of illusion. And you contrast them to mahatmanas, to mamparta, to the mahatmas who are daivim prakritim ashrita, who take shelter of my transcendental potency. What's interesting about this is it means we're always going to be controlled by something above us. And we can either be controlled by something transcendental or we can be controlled by something illusory. And so this idea of being under control, of being beguiled, but in a transcendental sense is here in this verse. Did you guys follow that? So I'm warming up. I'm going to bring it all together now. And finally, for my... I got one more, and then we'll do the finale. Arjuna says, Saketi matva prasabam yat uktam. I presumptuously called you friend and thought of you as friend. Hey Krishna, hey Yadava, hey Saketi. And I called you, hey Krishna. Hey in Sanskrit means like, oh Krishna, come here. Oh Yadav, oh Saka, Saka means friend. I called you friend, Krishna, Yadava. Ajanata mahimanam tavedam. I did not know your glories. I did not know your glories. Maya pramadat pranayena vapi. Because of madness and love. So here's Arjuna admitting, your baby is okay. Are you worried about making noise? Noise of children that are being minded by their parents are like music to my ears. Noise of children that are being ignored by their parents are incredibly disturbing to me. I have 6 children. I've never not minded them in the temple. As long as you're working with your child, if you've driven all the way down here, they can make as much noise as they like. Unnecessary conversation somehow is like nails on a chalkboard for me. Children cooing or even crying, I'm super happy about. So you just keep being a good parent, and whatever happens, I'm not worried about. You came all the way down, you stay and be peaceful. If you want to take them out to change their diaper, okay. Otherwise, you let them stay, no problem. Even you feed them here, I don't care, no problem. Just put a chadar over you, an uttariya over you, no problem. A dupata over you, no problem. Here Arjuna is saying, out of illusion and love, I called you my friend, not knowing your glories. How cool is that? So, just to recap, and we're about to get to the finale. In the Gita, we have, also Krishna says, because bhaktas tam sakka cheti. I'm going to tell you because you are my bhakta and you are my friend. Therefore, I'm going to teach you this knowledge. So, we have Krishna calling Arjuna his friend. We have Arjuna admitting that he, out of love, used to think of Krishna as his friend. We have Krishna telling us that there is a supreme abode that's his place. It's his place. Mama Dham. It's my place. You can go to Krishna's place and be with Krishna. And we have Krishna telling us that his birth and these other quizzical, vexing activities he engages in, that these activities are actually transcendental and liberating. Do you follow this? And then we have Krishna telling us that we will always be under the control of a higher energy. Either that energy will degrade us or will uplift us, but there's always something above us kind of beguiling us and controlling us. And then finally Krishna says, Sarva guhyatmanam bhuyaha shunume paramam vacha. I'm going to speak to you the greatest secret of all, my supreme instruction. Listen carefully. Ishta asi me dridham iti tato vakshami te itam. Because I love you so much. Because I love you so much. I'm speaking this for your benefit. Manmana bhavamad bhakta. Think of me. Become my devotee. Yaji mam namaskaru. Worship me. Offer your respects to me. Mam evaisyasi satyam te pratijane priya asime. Because I love you so much, I promise you that you'll come to me if you just become my devotee. So, I don't think there's a clean worship Krishna in Vrindavan, forget he's God, kiss him on the lips, protect him, suckle him from your breast, think of him as a child, completely forget his divinity entirely. We don't find that in the Gita. Rather, what we find in the Gita is we find Vishnu, a classical, traditional conception of divinity. But then, woven within that classical conception of divinity, throughout the chapters, we find little bits of sweetness, of Krishna's personality leaking out and being exposed. It starts off in the 4th chapter, where Krishna says, you can understand this because you are my bhakta and my sakha, my friend. It continues in the 4th chapter. My birth is actually spiritual, as are my activities. And if you can understand them, Krishna playing like a child, then you're liberated. And you'll go to Krishna. And Krishna's abode is the highest abode you can go to, according to the Gita. And in that abode, you are sheltered and controlled by Krishna's Daivi Prakriti. And in that place, you satatam kirtayantamam. You just sing about Krishna all the time. And Arjuna says, I thought of you as my friend, and I called you, O Krishna, O Yadav, O friend. And I called you that pranayena, out of pranay, out of love, I called you this. Which indicates in an intense situation of loving God, you may forget his divinity so much so that you just call out to him as your friend. And then finally Krishna says, I love you so much. I'm thinking of you. I promise you this. All you need to do is think of me and become my devotee. And that's enough, and that will carry you to me. So you find a really sweet, intimate relationship between Krishna and the soul, spoken of in the Gita, not in between the lines. It's actually there in the verses. And so given it's not Janmashtami, but it's kind of close to Janmashtami, I thought, let's see if we can find Krishna in Vrindavan in the Gita. And this was the best I could do. And so, I think there's great value, and we'll finish with this. I think there's great value in being afraid of God. Sinful people should be afraid of God because they're sinful. And if they're afraid of being punished, then they'll behave. That's why we have laws. Instead of them being recommendations, they're laws, and they're attached to punishments. Because if you made them recommendations, people would not follow them. Imagine if you made speed limits recommendations. They would not get followed. Now it's arguable that perhaps it would be safer, like the Autobahn in Germany and other places, and they have much lower rates of car accidents. People take more responsibility for driving appropriately. That's sort of neither here nor there. At least some laws should be there against murder and rape and violence and assault and embezzlement and thievery and armed robbery and so on and so forth. And so if we look at the world at the lowest level, what makes people behave is fear of violence being done to them if they don't. When the police pull you over, there's an unstated reality. If you don't pull over, they'll make you pull over. And if you don't comply, they'll force you to comply. And they even carry guns with them, so that their forcing you to comply could even be lethal. And that's always there. That's why if a police officer pulls you over, you've already been detained. There's 3 levels. There's a conversation, there's being detained, there's being arrested. This has to do with your Fourth Amendment rights. And so if a police officer pulls you over, you're detained. They can't say, I pulled you over to have a conversation, because they're so powerful and they have guns that any normal person driving down the road, if a police officer says to pull over, feels like they have no choice in the matter, and therefore you've effectively been detained. If you're on the street and the police officer says, hey, come here and talk to me, you can say, do I have to talk to you? They go, no, I just want to have a conversation. He goes, so I'm free to leave? And then you can walk away. If they pull you over in a car, you don't feel that way, because they have so much power. You follow? So on some level, we live in a world where we are afraid of being punished if we don't behave properly, and we actually set up civilization like that. In many ways, that's the essence of civilization, is setting up rules to protect the weak and the innocent from being abused. And when people believe in God, they believe in God as being the police force in the sky, whose eyes are the sun and the moon, who sees everything. And if you don't behave, you'll be punished. And therefore, 5 billion people of the world pray, give us our daily bread and forgive us our trespasses. They pray for forgiveness. They pray for being given things. They're afraid when they're in a situation where they can't control it. They pray to God. They're afraid, and they feel okay, at least I've got the big man maybe looking out for me. Maybe. And then you maybe give a little bit of dakshina. You give a little donation in the hundi to try and buy God's favor. We live in a world where fear is very present, and we extend that to divinity. And most people are in a healthy way afraid of God, and that's why they behave. This is from like the time we're children. Our parents punish us and put us in timeouts. Our teachers punish us and put us in timeouts. They send us to the principal's office, into detention, give us extra homework, give us standards, and then we grow up and we learn about more and more laws, and there's people above us and powers above us, and we have to obey those powers. If we don't obey those powers, bad things happen. And then when we think about God, we think about God in the same way, as being some kind of principal in the sky, some kind of school teacher in the sky, some kind of police officer in the sky, some kind of judge in the sky, maybe a loving parent, but parents can also punish you. And I think for most people in the world, that's probably just about how it should be. Most people in the world would not follow if there wasn't fear of punishment. People who are naturally pious, who will follow just because it's the right thing to do, are few and far between. Mostly, people have to be afraid of getting caught in order to get them to comply. And what people do behind closed doors is usually like a lot worse than what people do out in public. People with integrity behave behind closed doors the exact same way they behave in public. Maybe they go to the bathroom. They go behind a closed door to not offend people or something like that. But they're not hiding. They're not doing something they'd be embarrassed about and hiding it from people. They live a life where their life could be an open book. You put a TV camera in their house, in their bedroom, or wherever, and it might be it wouldn't be embarrassing. It might be an invasion of privacy. Higher level, you put a camera in their head, and they're not doing anything embarrassing up there either. Most people aren't like that. So the threat of an angry deity who could punish you is incredibly valuable. Obviously, there's limits to that. Obviously, that's a fairly crippled notion of divinity, and there's pretty serious limitations on the depth of such a relationship. Krishna Vrindavan is when you start to really explore how far you can take love, how much you can fall in love with God. what happens when you really fall in love with God. Piety becomes automatic. It no longer has to be pursued separately. You've gone past piety. You've become naturally pious. And now you just want to love divinity to the highest extent possible. And we have a picture of that. You forget Krishna's God, and when you see Krishna, you embrace him, you kiss him, you dance with him, you suckle him, you care for him, you protect him. That's why we worship Krishna as a child. That's why we worship Krishna with his mother. That is not the Krishna of the Gita. The Krishna of the Gita is actually a classical conception. It's Vishnu. But it's Krishna. So if it is Krishna, at least we should find some homage, some foreshadowing, something in there that speaks to the possibility of a deeper world, of a higher place where we could transcend that fear-based relationship and live in a land of love with Krishna. And so I found half a dozen verses. One where Krishna says to Arjuna, "You are my friend." One where Krishna tells Arjuna, actually my birth and my leelas are all transcendental, and if you understand them, you go back to heaven. Which means that it's not that the real job is to understand how Krishna wasn't born and exists forever and is everywhere at all times, but there's something magical about Krishna's birth and activities that warrants deep consideration. There's something beautiful about it, namely what I just described. And then again Krishna says, there is a place above this world that's my place, and you can only go there by pure devotion. And pure devotion, by definition, requires you to transcend formality in order to truly fall in love with God. And then Krishna says, what am I devoted to? Satatam kirtantamam. They're always singing about me. And then Arjuna admits, actually, out of love, I call you, oh my friend, and think of you as being my friend, out of divine madness in love. And Krishna explains, you're always under my control. Either you're under the control of illusion, or if you turn towards me, you're under control of my Daivi Prakriti, my Yoga Maya potency. But there's always a sense in which we're being held by Krishna in his hand, either by the law of karma or by this sweet sense of magic. And then finally Krishna says, I love you so much, I'm going to tell you the secret to everything. You just think of me and become my devotee, and that's enough. Within the same verse he says, worship me and offer your respects to me. Like I said, there is no clean verse in the Gita which explicates this. But there are half verses and ideas scattered throughout the entire text. And you find the revelation of Krishna in Vrindavan woven into the Gita in a very synopsized, in a very genetic, incipient, seed-like fashion. Okay. Any feedback? Yes, loud and proud.
This past has taught me that being a friend or the word friend has more value to it. I think I've been using it loosely, and I don't want to do that. So, I mean, people that I love that are not, I guess, like my family, I want to call them a friend because I love them.
Yeah, this changes the way you even view the world in which you live. These ideas don't just change the way you view God, but they also change the way you view the world in which you live. It's good religion when you think about it and it changes not only the way you think about divinity, but it also changes the way you think about the rest of your life. That's good. So it makes you think more deeply about what it means to be somebody's friend, what it means to be somebody's well-wisher, what it means to have a friend, what it means to be a friend, and that there's actually something very, very deep and even spiritual there, right? Excellent. One more? Yeah.
I find it really interesting hearing from you about like getting these little snippets of Krishna and Vrindavan from the Bhagavad Gita, especially because like I was born in the movement and I've always had a conception of Krishna and Vrindavan or in this mood as a child of love, but from an outsider's perspective, thinking about how it's like hidden within the Gita also, I was appreciating it.
Yeah, you were born a Vaishnava, your parents are Vaishnavas, you were raised as a devotee. And so thinking of Krishna as a child is as natural for you as anything, because you were being taught that along with being given your mother's breast milk. And so then it just kind of like everything is one. Everything is towards Mahaprabhu and Krishna. And you didn't go through the process of becoming a devotee because you didn't join from an outsider's perspective. Now that there's a benefit to that, you've been a vegetarian your whole life, stuff like that. You've been pious your whole life. But there's a deficit to that too. You never got a chance to look at the books through a fresh set of eyes as if you've never read them, and subjecting them to doubts and seeing how they stack up against your doubts and letting them answer your questions and letting yourself be converted and learn to see the world in a better way. And you have to go through that now in your adulthood. You have to go back and look at your tradition again, even though your faith is natural. And so that's a good thing to do. It's a good thing to do. You didn't start with 0 and became 1. You started with 1, but you want to become 3. You follow? There's still movement forward. There's still a value in it. It just takes you, instead of from 0 to 1, it takes you from 1, what you were born with, to 3. Anandini?
Thank you for this beautiful lecture and for setting the mood for Janmashtami. And it reminds me of a trip we took to India where you spent a lot of time like explaining the conception of God and like the general one. And then we visited several temples, and it wasn't until we got to Vrindavan where we really experienced the sweetness of loving God in a more intimate way. And I just remember like really being hit by it, and me growing up with the Vishnu conception of God and all powerful in the sky, and then seeing how special our temples are, and like the way the worship is done, and how much thought is put into everything, and just like my heart being completely melted. So it's beautiful.
Your heartbeat melted? Your heart should melt. Your heartbeat should remain constant. Melting heartbeats are a cause for concern. Melting hearts for the win.
Okay.
Anyway, thank you. I'm like a little worried about you guys. I mean, your response was what I would expect. I just dug through 700 verses of the Gita and pulled out a couple of gems out of nowhere that led us in the direction of Krishna and Vrindavan. You guys should like have your jaws dropping underneath those masks and be thinking, wow, that was really far out. Geez, I'd never thought about that before. That was really cool. As opposed to this deadpan, poker face, slight meme mug I'm getting from you guys. Anyway, so thank you very much. We're going to be celebrating Janmashtami tomorrow, 6 p.m. to midnight. 6 to 9 will be our main thing, but we're going to go strong from 6 to midnight. We're going to serve food from 6 to 9, and then again we'll have a feast at midnight. It's a school night, maybe, not really. I don't know if school started yet, but it's a work day. And so we're not expecting people to stay super late like they would on a Sunday or a Friday or a Saturday. But we're doing the whole thing. New outfit. We're up till 5 in the morning sewing the outfit. Like brand new, beautiful, multi-$1,000 outfit. Hundreds and hundreds of dollars of flowers, beautiful garlands, amazing turbans on the deities. Radha and Krishna are making their once in a year appearance. Swing festival, Abhishek, big kirtan performance, bake sale, all COVID friendly, super safe. You guys are all welcome. Bring your friends. 6 p.m. tomorrow, we kick off. 7 o'clock, Abhishek. 8 o'clock, Julan Yatra. You'll be able to swing Radha and Krishna. Our whole thing is about moving from fear to love. We bathe Krishna like he's your child, and then we push them on a swing. The whole thing is about creating this loving atmosphere between you and the deity. Let's do a little kirtan. We'll take prasad. Thank you very much.